organized, authoritarian embracing cult. And all you have to do is look at this reaction. Donald Trump is a criminal and a traitor. We know that. But this party has allowed him to be that, and they are standing with him.
That was from my earlier conversation with former Illinois Republican Congressman Joe Walsh, who actually ran against Donald Trump for the nomination of the Republican Party. Let's bring in our first guest tonight. Ruth Ben-Ghiat is a New York University history professor. She's the author of the book Strong Men, Mussolini to the President. And unfortunately, she specializes in an area that I would have hoped Ruth would never cause us to cross paths, and yet I think we talk weekly as a result of this. Donald Trump's speech today in Georgia, the speech he's going to deliver in North Carolina, are a hit parade of crazy anti-democratic deep state conspiracy theory stuff. Simone was saying earlier that one would have thought Donald Trump would have had some strategy in his first outing after the indictment. The strategy seems to be to double down on the people who think that state is coming for you.
Yes, and that's consistent. That's all he has. He has to, and it's worked for him in the past very well for years. So just like Berlusconi, who was convicted and excuse me, sentenced to jail after he left office, it was all a witch hunt, and he's a victim. And so all Trump can do is to become more and more extreme, and to require more and more loyalty from his subalterns, from the subordinates of the GOP. So it's been very interesting to see all the loyalty performances of Kevin McCarthy and the others that are commanded by Trump because he needs all of these narratives to keep his popularity with his base.
Well, talk to me about that, Ruth, because there's the calculus for Kevin McCarthy, who knows that he needs to keep his very slim majority of a caucus together. There's also a different calculus for the Republicans who are running against Donald Trump because they, too, believe that they can be president, want to be president. There is the danger of Donald Trump deflecting, delaying, acting as though this is all about the deep state. There's also the danger of Republicans like Ron DeSantis and Mike Pence acting as his backup singers rather than as truth tellers.
Well, in fact, that's what they're doing. It's very typical, excuse me, it's very typical that instead of standing up for the rule of law, they too are, Nikki Haley and Mike Pence are attacking the DOJ. And this is consistent with an authoritarian party that's enthralled to a cult leader. And there's something called an authoritarian bargain. And that is when a leader like Trump, who demands loyalty and is highly corrupt, gets political elites to sign on to support him. And once they do that, they stick with him no matter what happens. I'm telling you, no matter what happens, they're there. And they do that because they become more and more complicit with his crimes, and he's always making more and more crimes, up to, with Trump, having a violent coup, and now, having documents, classified documents unlawfully. And so they are kind of stuck, and so they're in panic mode. And so I see a lot, I'm watching with this eye, for example, Jim Jordan.
Okay, let's go forward here. She's coughing and hacking and carrying on like she's got an allergy or something. I don't know what the problem is. Let's go on forward here. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Oh. No.
Reinvention.
Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Larry.
Keep going.
Take medical decisions away from it.
Keep going. Look. I want you to listen to this guy here. He's from the state of Tennessee. He's one of our representatives, the House of Representatives. These are the same people that basically shunned or was going to punish two men and a woman for standing up for gun violence. This is the same group of people coming from the state of Tennessee here. Now, I'm going to make some good points in what I'm thinking about here, because I feel like that some of the stuff that I may have said yesterday may have been a bit heavy in regards towards culture shock, and I feel like that's what people's going through right now. They're going through a sense of culture shock. But the bottom line is this: everybody, no matter who they are, ordinarily is innocent until proven guilty. Unless you got a camera and unless you got 1,000 witnesses to verify whatever's going on, they're supposed to be, in and by the eyes of the law, innocent until proven guilty. Now listen to some of this garbage coming out of some of these people's mouths that are basically using Donald Trump. And I'm not saying that Donald Trump is a good individual, and I'm not saying that he's not guilty of whatever that they're trying to charge him with, because he did take those records. What we don't know is what motivated him towards taking those records, and was it worth the risk in taking those records? I mean, you got to take under consideration, I took a big risk too. I took a big risk whenever I wound up going out west and doing what I'd done in my investigations towards understanding, connecting the dots together with Waco, pertaining to Mount Carmel, Waco, the Branch Davidians, and what went on in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I took a chance. At that point in time in my life, because of the way that I was being attacked by not only various family members or friends, but pertaining to law enforcement agencies around here, beginning right here in Martin, Tennessee in 2005, I really had absolutely nothing to lose but everything to gain. Now, whenever I come back here to this area, all of a sudden, this whole area in northwest Tennessee, between the Hop-In and the Cydonia, the Kenton, Tennessee, and the Sharon area, regarding Obion County, that sometimes I call Obama County, and Weakley County, in this area, it was a pile-on. If you look at it from a football perspective, where everybody wants to pile on the same person at the same time, they wanted to blame me for their own inadequacies pertaining to not seeing a manifestation of peace coming up here up onto the planet. Well, in 2009, after the incident happened with me again up in Kentucky pertaining to the ice storm, and then the incident happened with me again out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, once I understood what I was going up against, that's whenever I myself reversed the table and changed the narrative. In other words, up until that time, I had been steadfast in preaching about the Bible, which preaches peace and utopia, that there would be a revival and a revolution before the end of time. Once I identified that these people didn't want peace and that they was attacking basically the peacemaker, or the person with the message, the messenger, I changed strategies. I changed strategies because why? Because I understood that these people didn't want true peace. If they did, they would have gotten in behind me. They would have wanted to have known more about my ideology. How did I come up with this conclusion? Was this something that he just at a wing, just come off the top of his head? I mean, everybody, I guess, in a sense, that's got a decent heart and a decent mind wants peace. Peace of mind, peace of heart, peace within their neighborhoods, peace within their relationships. It's only the demonic and the wicked and the evil that don't want that, as far as I'm concerned. Well, whenever I come back here on the pylon, they was trying to do any and everything that they could to provoke me and my brother in doing something that was basically going to be detrimental in our own lives. And boy, did they ever come close. I mean, they come awful close. But instead of us being foolish towards taking their bait, we had to sit back and basically be their whipping post. They was trying to blame me because of their inadequacies. And because it was so strong, and because it was so emotional, it had a very, very strong toll on my brother's health that I truly believe and will always believe had a bearing towards him dying at the age of 51. What you're fixing to listen to pertaining to Donald J. Trump is basically the exact same thing of a group of people that are looking for an scapegoat. They're going to blame everything and everybody else other than themselves for the situation that we're in right now. And in ways, I think that God has used Donald Trump to stir the pot, per se. But this red herring that we're looking at here, and that's exactly what it is, it's nothing but a fiasco, is another way of getting us, we the people, that is concerned about our great nation, taking our eye off the ball where we should be focused upon pertaining to all the other problems in the world, especially the problems going on right here amongst our own families, amongst our own communities, to the point that we're now attracted to this show. I keep saying this. It's a diversion. It's the same way as they used to do back years ago whenever somebody was going to rob a bank on one end of town. They went to the opposite end of town and they created a diversion. Usually they caught something on fire. And while everybody was running to the fire, the bandits was going to the bank and they was robbing it. What we're seeing here is a diversion, and these diversions are costing us severely. Please listen to this.
I never thought I'd see a criminal case that made Richard Nixon look like a choir boy. Watergate was the worst thing that had happened to the presidency in our history. This is so much worse. Just trying to sell the government out probably to foreign governments, or at least.
Notice what he said, probably. He used the word probably. Take very close attention in what they say and how they say it in the demeanor that they say it in.
Or at least he's risking our government's security and safety by making these records available.
That was the Democratic Congressman Steve Cohen on the Katie Fang Show earlier today. Let's bring in our next guest, the Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro of Texas. He's a member of the House Intelligence Committee, also served as one of the House managers in the second impeachment of Donald Trump. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Good to be with you.
I want to hand you over to my colleague, Jonathan Capehart, to continue a bit of a conversation that we had started with Ruth Ben-Ghiat a few minutes ago. Jonathan?
Congressman Castro, great to see you. I'm highlighting in the indictment on page 2, which is probably the most scary thing I've ever seen attached to someone who used to be the president of the United States. And it's where they talk about the classified documents Trump stored in his boxes included information regarding United States nuclear programs, potential vulnerabilities of the United States and its allies to military attack, and plans for possible retaliation in response to a foreign attack. This is what the former president of the United States had in his possession and would not give back. Why should every American be concerned about that? On page 2, paragraph 3 of a 45 or so page indictment.
I am very concerned about that. And I feel like that every other American should be concerned about that. But what I'm concerned more is what has driven us to this point that somebody like Donald Trump had to do, or felt like that he had to do, something this courageous or careless, whichever word you want to use, courageous or careless, but it's an extreme move that had been done by a prior president. What motivated him? What drove him? What motive does he have for him doing what he's done? Now, I realize that they're wanting to point the finger in every direction towards the bad direction. He's a traitor. He's a this. He's a that. He's made lots of mistakes. The mistake that he made pertaining to Ukraine is undeniable. That was a very, very harsh mistake that he made with Ukraine. And as far as I'm concerned, he got reprimanded for it and shamed because of what he done to the leader of Ukraine towards basically trying to blackmail that leader. He has said and done some other crazy things that I disagree with. But he's also said and done some things that I agree with. And because of that, I haven't marked him off. I'm not going to use him as an scapegoat because I can see the whole picture and not just part of the picture. There's so many people in the world today. I don't know if they do it intentionally. I don't know if they're being spellbound. I don't know what's going on with them, but they cannot see the trees for the forest. They cannot see the trees for the forest. They cannot look through the red herring or this fiasco that's being created, the smoke screen that's being created. They cannot look through it and see the motive in behind it towards why is it even occurring to begin with. I would like to believe that Donald Trump loves this country, regardless of the mistakes that he's made, and that he wants to do the best thing for the will of the people. But whenever the people aren't willing to stand up to the plate in acknowledging their mistakes, then you have the blind leading the blind. And usually whenever that occurs, there is total chaos that can elevate into violence. Pure, mere violence, just like what occurred January the 6th. I pray to God that that's not what this is all about, but if we don't watch, this will be the path that we take. And once we take the bait in the path that this entity, this evil entity wants us to take, and I ain't talking about the evil entity coming just from Donald J. Trump. I think Donald J. Trump is being used as a ploy, kind of like in a checker game. He's being used as a player to put us where we are right now towards being in limbo. And you have to admit, we as a society here in America are in a limbo. But the thing about it is, we did not become in limbo just because of Donald J. Trump. We was in limbo going back to the hanging chads pertaining to the young Bush and Al Gore. We was in limbo whenever we got attacked of 9/11. We was in limbo whenever we have went through some of the most obscure things that a nation the size of ours could ever think about going through, just like us being in limbo pertaining to COVID. Donald Trump made some of the most stupidest mistakes in listening to his medical officer team that I think that anybody could ever make. And some of the things that he done, like maybe you should drink bleach or do this or do that, I think was just stupid, absolutely stupid in somebody like Donald Trump saying stuff like that. And of course, there towards the last, he himself got COVID. Okay? There's another area that hasn't never been addressed yet pertaining to our professional medical officers that let us down in not being stern enough in opening people's eyes of understanding how lethal and how the potential danger of COVID ever was to begin with. I mean, we lost over 1 million people in that ordeal. And as far as I know, there's still people dying of COVID to this day. COVID hadn't went away, especially in some of these other third world banana Republican countries. COVID has not went away. Don't think for a second that it's went away.
Yeah, in a sense, Jonathan, it's shocking that a former president would be that careless and that reckless with highly classified material about U.S. nuclear secrets or war strategy or how we would respond to an attack. But on the other hand, this is Donald Trump, and his whole political career, he's been incredibly reckless and lawless. So in that sense, it's not a surprise. But
You know why? Because Donald Trump was not a professional political careerist. Donald Trump was a businessman. He went from a businessman to an entertainer. Then he went from being an entertainer to a political man. Everybody and their brother knew that Donald Trump was not a professional politician. This is another area that I feel like that the Republicans and the Democrats should take just as much fault for, because they allowed for somebody to come on board that they knew was going to create chaos. And man, has he ever created chaos. In other words, the clown in the circus has been just exactly that. He has been the clown in the circus. Now, are we, us, as individuals, smart enough to understand all this and look through all of this to recognize this is being done by a higher form of entity? I personally believe that it's being done by a evil entity, by a evil bushwhacker or kidnapper, or whatever word that you want to use, blackmailer, towards leading us down this endless road. I mean, we know that they did not fix the $32 trillion indebtedness bill. They know that we are in trouble financially. And whenever I say they, I'm talking about all parties, Republican and Democrat. You can throw stones at Donald Trump all you want, but it's basically our politicians that allowed him to come on board towards basically going to allow for him to fit this fulfillment of being the clown in the circus, this show that's going on. Because I promise you, before it's all said and done with, on top of the hundreds of millions of dollars that's already been spent on one calamity after another, the calamity of going to court with Donald J. Trump is going to cost the American taxpayers more and more money. Money that could be used towards schools, money that could be used towards roads, money that could be used towards the homeless, money that could be used towards research and medical industries, money that could be used towards helping put somebody on the moon so that they can create a medication that would help maybe possibly save somebody's life from cancer. I could go on and on and on about the wasted resources that every time these calamities happen, we become unfocused. We become more focused on the show than we are towards what we're supposed to be focused upon. And that's the reason why I use the strategy towards the bank. Somebody going to rob the bank on one end of town, and the whole time they're deliberately creating a diversion. That way people aren't onto them towards what's actually occurring.
For a few very fundamental reasons. First of all, if you think about where he's storing it at Mar-a-Lago, you have not only Americans who are part of that club, but you've got a lot of foreign visitors, including, I believe, some people who have worked for foreign governments.
He believes. Catch his words. Catch their words. He believes. That's a hypothetical. Okay? I can believe anything. But as far as it being factual, you have to pay close attention to what these individuals are saying.
As spies who have come through there, And
Spies.
so there were people there who were tracking around who could very easily, if they got a hold of those documents, turn them over to foreign governments and make the United States incredibly vulnerable. But also...
And I'm not saying that none of that isn't so. But what I am saying is that these people that get on TV want to blow these things out of proportion with all their hypotheticals, and they get people all hyped up, and that in and of itself is turning into some sort of a freak show.
The other part of it is that it contained information not only about the United States, but also quite possibly about our allies. Remember, we have, for example, Five Eyes partnership with 4 other nations that involves intelligence sharing. And so it weakens our ability to share information with other countries because they're going to trust the United States less. They're going to have less confidence and less faith that the information they pass along to us is safe and is not vulnerable to being taken or stolen or somehow shared with the wrong people.
Congressman Sally here. The president seems to have a dwindling base of people who are prepared to do anything more than stand outside and wave flags for him. I'm not sure he can do a repeat of January 6th, but boy, he's got 2 appearances today, one this afternoon in Georgia, one tonight in North Carolina, and he's got some inflammatory language that he's using. It's like it's his best of. Litany of retribution and the only thing standing between them, whomever them is, and you is me. There's always concern that this president leans on what he knows, and what he knows is how to get a crowd going.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And January 6th, in many ways, was a call from Donald Trump asking for Americans who support him to take action into their own hands, including violence. And that's what we saw on January 6th of 2021 at the United States Capitol. And his language since then has gotten even more inflammatory. And, there was a part in that indictment where he asked the lawyers, or he kind of strongly hints to the lawyers that they ought to throw away or delete or somehow remove those highly classified documents so that the government can't get them. That is his MO. He's basically, in the same way he was asking those lawyers to do his dirty work, he's signaling through his, True Social account, through his rallies, his interviews, he's trying to signal to the people who are diehard MAGA folks, who love him, to take matters into their own hands, and I believe that could include violence.
Congressman, this is Simone Sanders Townsend. I am wondering about the rhetoric of other individuals. Donald Trump's rhetoric has always been incendiary and just astronomical. But there are other individuals, folks like Speaker McCarthy, other Republicans, specifically within the House of Representatives, who are parroting this rhetoric. And we know, we can just look at the past year across our country in America, the rhetoric oftentimes that these elected officials parrot, they turn to action by other individuals out there. Are you concerned about the rhetoric of other mainstream elected officials, particularly Republicans in Congress?
I am, and I have been for a long time. Whether it's Speaker McCarthy, who, even if you were just being generous to him, he's an enabler of the lawlessness of Donald Trump. He's an enabler because he felt like he needed Donald Trump in order to ascend to the speakership. So he made a deal with the devil, so to speak. After condemning Donald Trump and laying responsibility for January 6th at his feet first, he then did a total 180 because he thought he needed Trump to become speaker. So he's become an enabler. And then you have folks like Representative Higgins, who seem to put out some kind of coded tweet, again, calling MAGA supporters to perhaps go down to Miami in a show of force or some other kind of action. So yeah, I mean, there has been and there continues to be very disturbing rhetoric. And really, Simone, let me tell you, I think beyond the immediate moment, why it concerns me. Because Donald Trump is still the leading Republican candidate for president of the United States. And anytime, as y'all know, if you become the Republican nominee for president or the Democratic nominee for president, you're within about 7 points or so of becoming president. You hardly ever see that presidential race go beyond a 7-point spread. And if Donald Trump is somehow able to get past these indictments, or they get pushed back somehow beyond the election, something happens where he's able to get elected again, then to him, his election will be an affirmation by the American people in his own mind that everything he stood for, all the rhetoric that he has used, all the law breaking that he's engaged in is thereby affirmed. And that's exactly what Americans want. And he will serve it right back up to all of us. And we will essentially be in a fascist state. Donald Trump is reelected.
Congressman.
I keep hearing that word "won't," what the American people want. The wise people of this country should no longer look at what we want, but what we need. And if we're not wise enough to see that because of greed, then just as the Bible talks about that pride cometh before a fall, we are fixing to take a fall. And that fall is not going to be a pretty fall. Now, we can try to head off the fall, similar towards how Winston Churchill analyzed the Civil War over here in America and said that it was an unpreventable event. In other words, everything lined up just right to the point that it happened. And there wasn't nothing that nobody could have done to have prevented it from happening. Now, we can either make the same mistakes as we have made before, or we can identify in what's happening, why it's happening, and head it off before it does happen. And if we're not willing to do that, then stop belly aching whenever all hell basically busts loose in our lives, regardless whether it's a medical problem, a financial problem, a political problem, a church spiritual problem, or a diplomatic problem. Don't be belly aching and blaming the blame on everybody else for your own inadequacies. Like I said, everybody and their brother is doing a pile-on right now on Donald Trump. And I guess in some perspectives, it's deservingly, rightfully, deserving. But in the process of the pile-on, if you was Donald Trump, you would also be using inflammatory language. Your dandruff had been stirred up because now you realize that these people don't either understand you or they're purposely trying to sabotage you in trying to make an image of Donald J. Trump of being an enemy of the state pertaining to high treason. There's no doubt Donald Trump is not a professional politician. There's no doubt Donald Trump has made some pretty dumb mistakes. But under the circumstances towards what he walked into, especially with COVID, he probably has handled himself halfway decently in comparison to what some other presidents would have done during the same circumstances and consequences. Now, I don't know who dropped the ball pertaining to the Afghanistan ordeal. I know it was Donald Trump and his administration that set that agreement up with the Taliban pertaining to what went on over in Afghanistan. But somebody dropped the ball on that, and I personally believe that it was as much Joe Biden's fault as it was Donald Trump's fault because of the calamity that happened during the time that it occurred, not counting the men that died because of it, and not counting 11 days later the Taliban takes the country back over again. It's very, very dehumanizing to think that you're an American and this continually keeps happening again and again and again. The fault is the Bushes that have brought in a stain on the American people. Regardless whether it's a Republican stain, a Democrat stain, it is a stain. between the Reagans and the Bushes, they have put us where we are today. And now we're having to deal with the consequences towards what they done. Period. And if you can't identify that and see that towards your IQ being not no bigger than your shoe size, well then maybe you should stay off TV, stay off the airway TV and not make your comments the way that you make them. Because like I said, right now, I'm seeing a pile on. And that's exactly what happened whenever Dennis James Jackson come back to his hometown, to his home community in Northwest Tennessee. There was an onslaught of a pile on. People being entertained, even though they wasn't engaged in what was going on out here, they still knew it was going on out here, and they was being entertained by it. Now, if you corner those same people up today and say, was you aware of the things that was going on down there at 291 Thompson Road and 430 Beach Grove Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255? Oh no, I didn't know nothing. They're full of hypocrisy. They're full of deception. They're not truthful to themselves. And if they're not truthful to themselves, do you really think that they're going to be truthful to one another? That's where it begins. It begins with us.
Always for taking time to be with us. We appreciate it. Congressman Joaquin Castro of Texas. All right, stay with us. More coverage of the indictment of Donald Trump in just a moment. We'll speak with Congressman Jamie Raskin.
Like I said, they're turning this into a fiasco, a red herring, and it's really sad because
dealing with his alleged
because it's being done on our dime. And the thing about it is, it's not just our dime. It's my granddaughter's dime. It's possibly her children's future that's at risk here. And her children's future that's at risk here. So it's not just our dime.
Velshi, welcome to MSNBC's continuing coverage, special team coverage of the second indictment of Donald J. Trump. I'm joined tonight by my colleagues, Alicia Menendez, Jonathan Capehart, Eamon Mohidin, Simone Sanders Townsend, and with us from Miami, Katie Fang. In a bombshell 37-count indictment unsealed on Friday, federal investigators have accused the ex-president of lying, scheming, and misleading officials in order to hold on to sensitive materials from his time in the White House. Trump is scheduled to appear in a Miami federal court on Tuesday, where he's going to face his second arraignment in just 2 months. Now, you'll remember back in April, he pleaded not guilty to 34 felony counts filed in Manhattan over alleged hush money payments that prosecutors say the former president paid to an adult film star in 2016. But Trump's legal trouble doesn't stop there. The ex-president is still staring down another investigation from the Justice Department dealing with his alleged plot to hold on to power after the 2020 election. And in Georgia, the Fulton County District Attorney has indicated that she would announce a decision on indictments later this summer in her office's investigation into Trump's election subversion efforts in that state. So while this week marks Trump's second indictment, this may not be his last. As I said, I'm here with Alicia, Jonathan, Eamon, Simone, and Katie in Miami. Let's start with Katie because it's going to be a big week in Miami. On Tuesday is just like the last time, we heard about this first from Donald Trump. What are we expecting to happen, and what does the timeline on this case look like?
So the arraignment's going to take place at 3 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday at the federal courthouse in downtown Miami. At that arraignment, once Donald Trump enters a plea of not guilty, we all are going to keep our eyes on scheduling, right? We want to know, when is that case going to be set for trial? Because in a criminal case, even also in a civil case, you're going to work back from that trial date. And so there's going to be a trial date set, and all the work has to be done leading up to that particular date. Everybody's going to see, is it going to be in 2023? We are still in June. There's still 6 months left in this year. 6 months is a long time, even in federal court, to be able to try a case. We know that Special Counsel Jack Smith has made it very clear he intends on having a, quote, speedy trial. And if that ends up happening, the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, may actually be sitting in a federal criminal trial before the end of 2023.
And that's what they want. Let's back up just for 1 second, though, and let's hear what she just said. Let's pay close attention to what she just said.
So in a civil case, you're going to work back from that trial date. And so there's going to be a trial date set, and all the work has to be done leading up to that particular date. Everybody's going to see, is it going to be in 2023? We are still in June. There's still 6 months left in this year. 6 months is a long time, even in federal court, to be able to try a case. We know that Special Counsel Jack Smith has made it.
No, it's not. It's just a matter of what they want to do towards putting things on the front burner or the back burner and taking one case and putting it off to another case.
Into Trump's election subversion efforts in that state.
They're going to do what they want to do, I promise you.
So while this week marks Trump's second indictment, this may not be his last. As I said, I'm here with Elise.
And it probably won't be his last.
With an Eamon, Simone, and Katie in Miami. Let's start with Katie because it's going to be a big week in Miami on Tuesday.
Oh, that's what they want. They want it to be a big show.
Is the just like the last time we heard about this first from Donald Trump.
You see all these news reporters, all these anchormen, these main anchormen. These are the same people that I basically faced off on whenever they had the Martin Luther King thing down at Memphis, Tennessee. I think it was in 2018 or 2019. They had a big deal down there. I identified who they was, and just as clearly as they identified who I was. These are the same people that took a part in the conspiracy that they was going to shove religion down the American people's throat, though they was telling the world one thing, in reality they was doing something completely totally different. These people thinks that we're not on to them. We are on to the whole group and who they are, what they are, and why they're doing what they're doing. Now it's up to people like me to help to enlighten people like you. That way you will not fall for the same bait.
What are you expecting to happen, and what does the timeline on this case look like?
So the arraignment's going to take place at 3 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday at the federal courthouse in downtown Miami.
Now those are facts. You just said a fact.
Miami. At that arraignment, once Donald Trump enters a plea of not guilty.
Now stop. How does she know that Donald Trump's going to plead a plea of not guilty? You know, Donald Trump may be waking up to what's going on here, similar towards how I woke up to what was going on after my brother died in 2017, and I realized that playing their game, that's exactly what they wanted me to do. They wanted me to play their game. So I went ahead and pleaded guilty, not so much of a stalking charge, but pleaded guilty of being concerned about 3 little children across the road, to the degree that my brother and I had already contacted Child Abuse Center in downtown Nashville and a Child Abuse Center in Weakley County. Now, Judge Pence didn't know that. I think Tommy Moore may have known that, but they didn't care about that, because what they wanted to do was put a felony on Jewbee. Well, the whole time, by looking at my particular case, they have been wanting to criminalize me ever since I stood out into the eyes of the general public with a sword, swearing off on an allegiance towards wanting to defeat all enemies abroad, either domestic or foreign. Because I stepped off into their arena without their permission, I was in violation. Same way with Jesus Christ. Jesus didn't get permission from the rabbis. Jesus Christ didn't get permission from the holy men or the priest or all the teachers or the scrolls that was in that area at that time. And because he didn't get permission from them, they seen him as an intruder. They seen Jesus Christ as an intruder. They may have went along with some of his teachings, and I'm pretty sure that they wasn't stupid people. They know that he had something going for him in favor towards all these miracles that was miraculously happening every time he would pray for people. They wasn't stupid people. But they didn't want that from Jesus. They wanted to put Jesus on a pedestal of him being a monster. They wanted to criminalize Jesus Christ because they felt intimidated or infuriated by this guy. Now, quote blank, that was 2,000 years ago. Today, they've done the exact same thing to me because I didn't get their permission in standing up in transferring pertaining to law enforcement affairs, regardless whether it was being an investigator or actually going after the bad guy, the actual monster. So in return, what did they do to me? They tried to turn the tables towards me being a monster, even though it was them up there in Dresden that couldn't control their monsters down here. And the reason why they couldn't control their monsters because they themselves are monsters. Once more, Jesus spoke very clearly about your house being desolate. He spoke very clearly about Satan trying to cast out demons from Satan with Satan. He also spoke very clearly that a house divided against itself will not stand. How does she know that Donald Trump is going to plead a not guilty plea? By falling into their game. And that's exactly how they see it. They see it as a game. They don't see the realization in the lives that they're destroying or how much money that is going towards all of this. It could be going towards something else. They see it as a game. So what she just said was basically a hypothetical. Not a fact, but a hypothetical in saying Donald Trump, come Tuesday, him going to plead off in not guilty. Listen to it one more time.
We all are going to keep our eyes on scheduling. Tuesday at the federal courthouse in downtown Miami. At that arraignment, once Donald Trump enters a plea of not guilty.
Once Donald Trump enters a plea of not guilty. Boy, she's for sure about that, isn't she? Well, see, they thought that I was going to fight their case up here in Dresden, Tennessee, towards the same rigmarole that I went through up in Cadiz, Kentucky, towards basically being thrown under the bus over 2 non-threatening telephone calls that costed almost a year of my life. And when it was all said and done with, I still had to plead guilty to a charge that I never should have pleaded guilty to, even though it had been downsized to a misdemeanor. The fact of the matter is, they stole almost a whole year of my life while I was making $2,000 a week in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, up in Kentucky, that I still have not gotten no type of confirmation towards. Now, these people think that the founder of the Windmill Ministries Missions is asking them to play a part in supporting the ministry towards supporting peace. That's the part where you're wrong. After 2009, that ideal ended. Once I identified that they didn't want peace, that's whenever I started prophesying, beginning in 2005, of a bloody road ahead. Then in 2007, major electrical disturbances. The prophecy coming from the prophet, or the message coming from the messenger, changed in 2009 whenever they basically tried to kill me out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, by planting a bomb in the back of my truck, and then me coming back to Oklahoma and planting a seal. Once that seal got planted, that's whenever I started prophesying. Up until I started prophesying, I was only being a messenger towards the message of peace. They didn't want the message of peace. They didn't support the peace messenger. After 20 years of hammering on the same horse, once you realize that the horse isn't going to come alive, you stop beating on the same horse. Then you start beating by a different drum. And the drum is bloodshed, war, sorrow, misery, hardship. etc., etc., etc. Once more, those prophecies are coming true right down to the very T. Why? Because once more, the people didn't want to support the founder that started out with a mission of peace. They didn't want peace. Matter of fact, they didn't even want my brother and I to even come close of thinking about a rehabilitation center out here for the veterans or for people that's already ruined their lives on drugs and etc. They was so against this ideal of bringing in a recovery shelter. They was willing to do any and everything imaginable to have stopped it, even at the expense of a dead brother at the age of 51. So don't think that we're not on to you pertaining to who the true monsters really are. Because we are. We are. And I hope to God that Donald Trump can see this. Now, does that mean Donald Trump is an angel? No. Does that mean Donald Trump has not made any mistakes? No. He's made plenty of mistakes. But the imagery that they're wanting to put Donald Trump in is an imagery of being a monster. It's the same program that they used not only on myself, but on hundreds and thousands of other prophets of God, including the Lord Jesus Christ, because they was infuriated or intimidated by the truth. I still want to know the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth of what motivated Donald J. Trump of taking those records to his home place and analyzing them closely. Now, everybody and their brother has come up with all these hypotheticals. Oh, he's selling it to this. Oh, he's making money for this. Oh, he's turning against this. He's turning against that. You know, I mean, those are all hypotheticals. We don't know that for a fact. I do know that Donald Trump looked at what went on with the Ukrainians after the war broke out in saying that Mr. Putin wasn't nothing more than a genius. I kind of thought that that was way out in left field. I mean, there's no doubt there has been a mistake. And in the mistake, we've got almost 7 billion people on the planet, and the earth is becoming unsustainable towards taking care of this many people without starvation and grief and disease and war and all the above. But the mistake didn't just happen yesterday. It didn't just happen with Donald Trump. It didn't just happen with COVID. It happened way, way before then. And that's what I keep saying. And that's one reason why I feel like that Donald Trump went to Waco in kicking off his campaign, because he knew that that's where the injustices basically started. After the injustices started in 1988, whenever the 9 tapes went to the White House after Ronald Reagan succeeded in accomplishing what he accomplished with the superpowers. I don't look at part of the truth. I look at all the truth. Because it's going to be the truth that's going to set us free. Does that mean that I'm perfect? Hell no. Not even close. I got to ask for forgiveness of my sins every day. In some form or fashion. Some more so than others. But I'm striving towards that goal. I haven't allowed for Satan to diminish my concept or my dream or my ideal of the seed that was planted in my heart 30 plus years ago. God's message does not change. God's messengers may change, but the messengers are still going to have the same message, which is through and because of the blood of the Lord Jesus Christ that makes any of us worthy to go before the throne room of God. It's all based upon Thy kingdom come. Thy kingdom come. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. Not my kingdom. Not David Koresh's kingdom. Not Jim Jones's kingdom. Not the Christians or the Hare Christians or the Wiccans or some of the other Muslim religion or Allah. It's not his kingdom. None of these people that we are familiar with, other than Jesus Christ, it is the Father's kingdom through the Son of Jesus Christ. That is the message. That will always be the message. And if that message changes, it's not a true message.
We all are going to keep our eyes on scheduling, right? We want to know, when is that case going to be set for trial? Because
this is all a game.
It's even also in a similar...
a game that's very costly. That's costing us monetarily money, and it's also costing us lives. It's also costing us in bringing doubt and confusion and uncertainty to our allies.
In a civil case, you're going to work back from that trial date. And so there's going to be a trial date set, and all the work has to be done leading up to that particular date. Everybody's going to see, is it going to be in 2023? We are still in June. There's still 6 months left in this year. 6 months is a long time, even in federal court, to be able to try a case. We know that Special Counsel Jack Smith has made it very clear.
They could have the proceedings of this federal court within the next 45 to 60 days. They would have to get on the back burner. They would have to push things over. They would have to ask for amendments. They would have to do this. They would have to do that. But whenever it was all said and done with, they could put this trial with Donald J. Trump on the front burner and have it in behind a courtroom within the next 2 months if they really wanted to. Now, I don't know that they really want to, but it's pretty obvious somebody wants Donald Trump out of the game towards him not being effective, towards being a potential threat in winning the next presidential election. Because the circus clown has made too many people laugh, and the circus clown has overdone his duties, and because of it, the rest of them has become infuriated and intimidated by Donald J. Trump. Once more, I'm not trying to support Donald J. Trump, but at the same time, I don't support the Democrat Party neither. I don't support the Republican Party. I don't support the Democrat Party, because as far as I'm concerned, neither one is worthy of running the country. Neither one is worthy of running the show. There has still not been accountability in how come we have reached the plateau that we're at right now towards being $32 trillion in debt. And all these problems with gun violence and all the fentanyl and all the illegals and all the jails being full and all the suicides, while the rich is getting richer, the poor is getting poorer. It's still the same old of the 99%ers against the 1%ers, or the 1%ers against the 99%ers. Now, those 1%ers that's already done got what they have, they'll tell you, oh, no, we're for the American people. We love the American people. We hate to see anybody suffering. Really? Really? It's because of your methods and what that you have done for the past 30 plus years that has put the poor in the poorhouse. Really? You gonna tell me how much you care about me? Yesterday, I was in Dyersburg. I had to pay a bill. Decided to go to Tractor Supply store, and they told me that their propane gas pump had broken. But she explained to me, now if you go down the road here at the Amco station, they pump gas down there. Well, at the time, whenever I was at Tractor Supply, it was already 5:30, almost 6 o'clock. So I, like a dummy, get my vehicle, drive down where the Amoco station is, walk up to the door, and it's locked. Well, in the meantime, somebody on a bicycle sneaks up in behind me. This is in the daytime. I didn't hear him until after he got right up on me. Hey, mister, you got 50 cents I can borrow? I was so upset that the gas pump was broken at Tractor Supply. I was so upset that I was misled by being told that the Amoco station will pump your gas. Well, they will between 8 and 5, normal hours. That I basically gave that guy a cold shoulder and did not answer him. I did not say nothing to him. I just walked away from him and walked into my truck and got my vehicle and cranked it up. And I heard him say, okay, yeah, I see how you're going to be. Like that. And I had enough time to refrain, sitting, thinking about what he just said. And I thought to myself, you know what? He's right. I shouldn't have excused him the way that I did. Rather than me giving him 50 cents, I actually had cold drinks in my cooler that I could have offered to him. So, regrettably, I reached into my pocket, I grabbed what change that I had. I tried to run the guy down on the bicycle. I guess he was either frightened at that time or mad himself, and basically I missed my opportunity of being able to help that individual. But I thought to myself, no matter, I do not have an excuse for my actions of acting the way that I acted. Even if I didn't trust him with 50 cents, I could have at least offered him a drink out of my own cooler. And I didn't. And God chastised me for that. He chastised me because he said, you denied me, because that was actually me testing you, asking you for that 50 cents. And I felt so bad. I really did. I felt so intensely bad because I put my needs in front of somebody else's. And that's exactly what our politicians is doing to this day. They're putting their wants, their likes, their needs in front of the will of the people.
All the things that have to happen, all the potential delays. They're just basically saying it's three weeks, roughly 3 business weeks worth of actual trial. That's no indication of when it starts or when it ends.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're managing those expectations, Allie, because people would get very excited, right, if they thought this thing's going to trial in 3 weeks. No, that is the amount of time that the DOJ is anticipating the trial will take, but there's a lot of machinations that are going to come into play. Jonathan Capehart mentioning it the last hour. Delay is always going to be Donald Trump's friend. So in this instance, we already know that there's a brand new lawyer that's being brought on to lead this case. The 2 prior lawyers have now resigned. I mean, there's been a shuffling of what I am calling the chairs on the deck of the Titanic, frankly, in my opinion, but they are definitely trying to re-up a new legal team for Donald Trump. And then there's all sorts of motion practice that's going to happen. Motions to dismiss, motions for change of venue, motions to dismiss for overzealous prosecution, politicization of the process. I mean, there's going to be a lot going on, but we hopefully, fingers crossed, will be able to see some type of resolution either prior to the end of 2023 or in early the months of 2024.
Okay, we got this thing for all of Trump's legal representation. This dude goes through lawyers faster than I go through shiny bald head cream.
That's true. Is that meriting a response, Allie? I'm not going to respond to that. I'm gonna, upon advice of counsel, I'm going to plead the fifth at this point.
Jonathan, you take it from here.
Katie, real quickly on another scheduling question. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. On Tuesday, when Donald Trump shows up, will we hear from Judge Cannon when the date of the trial will be set, or can she put that off and make that announcement at another time?
So I'm going to answer like a lawyer. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say, yes, on Tuesday you could get a trial date, or yes, on Tuesday you could get a date for an upcoming hearing where the parties are going to advise the court how much time or when they think it's going to take to be able to get this case done. I mean, there's really, it's no rocket science though, right? There's no magic to this. The judge has an audit of cases. She has a calendar in front of her. She has a clerk. She has a judicial assistant. These people can tell her and she can say, this is when I want to go to trial on this case.
Katie, let me ask you really quickly about his lawyers that were then suddenly were not. He had lawyers as of Friday morning. I believe they appeared on cable news shows or network news shows to say that they were representing him, and then within 2 hours, suddenly a statement saying, "Oops, we realize this is being tried in Miami. We will not be able to make it down to Miami for this trial." That seemed very bizarre. You obviously are in this world. How strange was that? How do you interpret that? What do you make of the fact that they, up until Friday morning, were on TV saying they are still representing him, and then put out this statement within a couple of hours saying, actually, we're not representing him?
Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't pass the smell test, does it? I mean, you mean to tell me this was the first time that they even thought about a case being brought in Florida, let alone South Florida? Come on, please. I mean, it's insulting to the intelligence of Americans to suggest that. I mean, we know that there's always drama in Trump legal. We know that it's always sharp elbows. Who's got the sharpest elbows to be able to get to the front of the line? Boris Epshteyn is, quote, in-house counsel for Donald Trump. He's the one who's running interference, gatekeeping access. Tim Parlatore very publicly resigning just a few weeks ago. Evan Corcoran recusing himself from this case because he got subpoenaed and testified before the grand jury. And now you have Jim Trusty and John Rowley saying, I'm sorry, I didn't realize this is going to be in Miami. And so then Todd Blanche, who was brought on for the Manhattan DA's criminal case, he's going to be up next. But you know what? Look, I mean, that chart, you're running out of space to be able to talk about the different lawyers that are there. I mean, we could do the Rachel Maddow wall that we had before when we were dealing with all of the stuff that was going on. And so in this instance, though, let me be very clear so that our viewers understand. You know, Trump could tee up as many lawyers as he wants. He can say this one is next, this one's the one that I'm going to pluck out of obscurity to do. Not all judges, even Aileen Cannon, are going to sit there and actually humor him for that. If it becomes explicitly clear that it's just for purposes of delay and they're trying to prejudice this case and its prosecution, the judge could say, I don't care. You're not going to be able to do this, or you're going to do it, or we're still going to go to trial.
Okay, let's...
And I'm not saying that Donald Trump is going to plead guilty, because he would actually be crazy not in offering all this free TV time that basically he's going to get for free. He's going to get all this on the back end of the taxpayer's dollar. It's going to give him time to play out what he wants to say, how he wants to present it, who he's going to get to present it with. So in actuality, he would be a fool not to say not guilty. But the point that I was making is that the commentators a lot of times will try to put words in other people's mouths by saying, this is what he's going to say. We don't know that that's what he's going to say. That was a hypothetical coming from her. We do not know for a fact that Donald Trump is going to plead not guilty. We believe that that's what he'll do. I believe that more than likely that's what he's going to do. But that does not mean that that's actually what he's going to do. And I think people get it mixed up towards fact versus hypotheticals. It's almost like fact versus fiction, fiction versus fact, and it gets people so upset and it gets their emotions so stressed out that they become basically confused. And that's exactly what our adversary wants us to do. Our adversary, which is out to kill, steal, and destroy, wants to maintain confusion, because the Bible is very clear that Satan is the author of confusion. And if he can keep us confused, and if he can keep us at one another's throats in destroying each other, then we're not going to stay focused upon the real enemy that is causing this to begin with.
Okay, let's talk.
That's my point.
The first time I get indicted for anything, I am not expecting you all to throw me under the bus, all right? You say nice things to the media about it.
Recordings of you, though.
Yeah, clearly. So does everybody else, apparently.
See the facts.
But the second time, I would expect, like, at least, and I'm talking about Republicans, particularly Republicans in Congress, I would expect a slightly more sophisticated response. So when Donald Trump got indicted in Manhattan, they were all carrying on about how this is his personal business or whatever the case is. Now the response from everybody, and it's very orchestrated because everybody's using the same term, weaponization. It's all about the weaponization of the Department of Justice against Donald Trump, two standards of whatever law for everybody else. I don't know, you're the only one at this table who's been in real politics. Is this Is this going to work?
Well, one, it must poll well.
Yeah.
And two, when I say it polls well, think about, you look at all these polls about and the Pew Research Center again, who they track public trust in institutions. When it comes to Congress, when it comes to the White House, when it comes to the Supreme Court, confidence is very low. Confidence is low in institutions and people across the country. So the ground is very fertile for people to believe that the government is in fact being, there are nefarious things going on as it relates to Donald Trump. I think that's why it is very important that people sitting at tables such as these, that the media apparatus.
It's nefarious things going on pertaining to how the American people are being treated. Especially whenever you're stealing from not only us, but you're stealing from our children and our children's children because somebody wasn't on top of their game towards crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's towards becoming $32 trillion in debt. The proof is in the pudding pertaining to trust. And if the truth be known, I don't think the Republicans trust their own party. I don't think the Democrats, a lot of them, don't trust their own party. But to get them to admit to that, you would probably have better luck in causing a bull to become pregnant and having a baby cow.
Very clear in telling the truth. I also think that's why it's so concerning that elected officials who know better, like Josh Hawley, okay, who is a senator from Missouri, Yale, Harvard educated lawyer, knows better, but is saying things that he knows are not true. They're playing right into the hands of this narrative. But again, it all goes back to because Donald Trump does have a hold on the base of voters of a Republican presidential primary, and because of that, folks are concerned about alienating those voters because they in fact need them to.
What a weird situation we're in, and that base is getting smaller. That narrower base of people who will still come out and listen to Donald Trump is actually getting smaller, but it's still the swing base. It's still the base without whom
swing in a primary.
In a primary, correct. That Ron DeSantis is not going to win the nomination, or nobody else is. So they're hostage to this little base.
Well, it seems like by every poll, Donald Trump has about 30%, 35% of the Republican base firmly with him that's going to go wherever he goes. And so if you are Ron DeSantis or Mike Pence or whoever, and you're trying just to peel some of those away, you have to make this calculated decision. Do I run against their leader, or do I try to co-opt them and hope? And I would argue that and you tell me if I'm wrong, but there are probably some Republicans who are happy that Donald Trump got indicted because they want him to be drowned by all of
They
the...
all say privately. To be very clear, Jonathan,
Exactly.
it's what they all say privately.
That's what I was going to say. I don't know any of these candidates personally, but I suspect that they are watching this and saying, I want Donald Trump to drown in legal challenges and to be attacked, and I'm just going to kind of sit back and say, this shouldn't be happening to him, and then if he gets, if he gets convicted, it has to go to jail.
Joe Walsh said this morning that he wants him either to go to jail, or there are some Republicans who either hope he's going to jail or that something bad happens to him because they don't want to come out and say anything.
Right. Although I keep thinking about former Vice President Mike Pence. I mean, you can walk the line, but why use words like Russia hoax as he did in his first comments after the indictment? I think he's the most shameless of all the people who are running.
Who had the chance to be the least shameless, because January 6th gave him an opportunity to be the hero, the guy who...
They tried to kill him. They were screaming, hang Mike Pence, and there he is still carrying Donald Trump's water. But, I think one of the reasons why the Republican Party can't quit Donald Trump. I mean, I hear what you're saying about in the Republican primary field. They could get away from Trump, but the problem is on the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, the House of Representatives, those Donald Trump voters have members of Congress who they can call up, and Kevin McCarthy lives in fear of the Donald Trump.
They are well represented in the House.
It's just interesting to me because you go into this line of work, you go into running for office ostensibly because you either have a heart of service and you want to be of service, or because you're an egomaniac. And if what you want to do is to be of service, and there's no greater service you can currently offer this country than to stand on the side of democracy and on the side of the rule of law. Even if you're an egomaniac, I would make the argument that, you might not win this election. You might not become the person who wins this election's VP pick or a member of their cabinet, but you will go down in history as a person who is remembered for the contributions that you made, and that is so much more meaningful than being the 7th also ran from the left.
And also, how are you an egomaniac and concede your stage to Donald Trump? It kind of if you're a candidate who is egocentric and you have to play second, third, fourth fiddle to Donald Trump, then you've basically shot yourself in the foot, because there is no greater ego in American politics than that of Donald Trump, and he sucks the energy out of the entire Republican field.
I would watch Mike Pence. I would just say, watch Mike Pence.
You would watch him go from 1% to 2%?
What he said,
That'd be 100% improvement.
what he said before the indictment came out, I was watching my hotel room, it was strong. Mike Pence had righteous indignation, and he said the American people deserve to know, unseal this indictment so we know what happened. Post-indictment, got mealy mouth now, got real mealy mouth. But I think that this is damning. Damning, and I don't know, maybe this crosses the Rubicon.
I mean, we got 45 minutes left. We could just scrap everything else and just read. It's good reading. It's pretty good reading. Yeah,
In fact, you have done that.
Well, I've done it.
You can hear Ali Velshi read a dramatic reading of the.
We will have posted. So for those of you who don't want to read it, from being in a car, or you want to go for a run or something like that, I'll have it available as of tomorrow night. All right, coming up next, the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Jamie Raskin, joins us right after this.
Unbelievable how that they can throw humor in with all this. I mean, to me, it's nothing humorous. Especially whenever you're talking about this real lives.
A lot of people who get to the top of the mountain are happy.
We have trained around 100 students. Most of them have graduated after the final project, and
on one stock alone, just by logging into the website my husband created to help everyday people like me get revenge against Wall Street. As you can imagine, I've told hundreds of people about the system. At first, many
Because here's the logic. Isn't it, even if you think they're bad, let's say you think they're bad.
I do.
Okay. All right.
She wasn't on the fence.
Let's say that. Let's say hypothetically you think they're bad. Wouldn't it be better for me to take their money from them? I mean, I'm taking them. You know what I mean?
Take the money.
I'm defunding them.
And then you spend that money on campaigning
Against Saudi Arabia.
Right. I mean, I would probably buy a condo in Riyadh, so it wouldn't be the best use of.
Or you'd pay to change the word back to ducking.
That's
honestly better PR than what the golf people did. Abby, I don't know if you watch golf, but on this panel you seem the most like someone who would. So.
Whoa!
What?
Hey, I use a 5-iron now and then.
Yeah, hey, there you go.
That
playing is different than watching. It's a lot harder to watch golf than play golf.
I would agree with that.
I don't watch a ton of golf, but I do think that this is a very interesting thing. And I think that, look, I said it at the beginning of the show that I get most of my drama from sports. And this is where it happens. Jay Monahan, who is he's the commissioner of the PGA, a year ago, he said, any player, do not leave us and go to live because that is Saudi money. And so he's saying this, and now all of a sudden he's taking the money. So it tells me it's all about the money, and also
shows you how hypocritical that they are. Don't do as I say. Don't do as I do. Do only as I say.
That, and they really slowed down the operation of mailing out their postage for us.
When shipping via the Postal Service became more of a challenge, the drug cartels and the Chinese followed the same plan they used in the production of methamphetamine and moved their operations to Mexico.
Chinese would send people to Mexico and teach them how to do it. The synthesis of fentanyl is not overly difficult. What is difficult is maximizing your yield so you're not losing money in the process. And then having the ability to do it in mass. That's what the Mexicans got really good at. And then they used their established trade routes and put it through the United States Southwest border. I had the 30,000 foot view of what was going on in the United States at the time. because we were dealing with it at a global scale. It wasn't just national. We were dealing with our foreign counterparts and what they were seeing and how it was going. And you know, everybody seems to forget that Canada was suffering just as much as the United States was at the time as well. And they were dealing with car fentanyl much more than we were here in the United States. And although it was probably the same distributors out of China, it was just a totally different thing.
Carfentanil is an opioid that is used by veterinarians for very large animals like elephants. It is approximately 100 times more toxic than fentanyl and 10,000 times more toxic than morphine. Any contact with fentanyl or carfentanil can prove fatal.
There were situations where people were dying while they were mixing it because people didn't understand it.
A few specks of it can kill you. And when we were dealing with kilos, we were taking 20 and 40 kilos at a time off the streets, which would literally kill your entire state.
Heroin is damaging, but fentanyl and then carfentanil are just extremely right damaging. And it's hard for someone who hasn't talked to someone who has been addicted to understand why someone would take such a thing, right? And so, I think that's where, people blame those who are addicted or, stigmatize those who are addicted, but in reality, they don't have, control, right? Because they do, end up turning to those drugs, or they, have this, sort of physiological need because of their addiction to satisfy.
I remember hearing stories about informants being told or undercover personnel being told, you know what you're getting into. Like they had a disclaimer with it almost. You know what you're getting into. You understand what you're asking for, because people were dying left and right. But again, that kind of goes by the wayside when you start reaping the benefit of what it is that you're selling.
Even with the toxic risk associated with synthetics such as fentanyl and carfentanil, these lab-based drugs offer a significant advantage over crop-based drugs.
Here's the other perfect storm that people don't understand. When you're dealing in cocaine and you're dealing with heroin, you're dealing with harvest, you're dealing with purity issues, you're dealing with very expensive process by where you're turning plant into a product. Fentanyl, you can make as strong as you want or as weak as you want at any given time. There is no harvest cycles, there's no seasons. There's just the ability to make it.
Whether it's heroin or fentanyl, no matter how you cut it, what drives the drug cartels are the multi-billion-dollar profits. When he was head of the Medellin cartel, Pablo Escobar was making $420 million each week.
These are multi-billion-dollar enterprises, and the traffickers in Colombia and then later in Mexico saw a golden opportunity to make a lot more money. Heroin at the time, you got to remember, 1 kilogram of heroin, 2.2 pounds of heroin, was able to yield about 25,000 little glassine bags. Each one of those bags would sell for $10 on the street, and that's without even cutting it. So you could yield $250,000 in gross sales from 1 kilogram of heroin, right? So there was an unbelievable profit margin.
A kilo of fentanyl, let's just go with the real conservative number, 500,000 dosage units. If you know what you're doing with that and you can mix that up, 500,000 pills, let's say you make it into a pill, you can sell anywhere from $1 to $20 a pill. But if you take it just for $5, 5 times 500,000 is what, 2.5 million? On something that costs you maybe $8,000, then you add a little bit more equipment, low cost startup, high profit yield.
Does China know what they're doing? I'm sure they know, because it's a communist country and they control everything that goes on in China, right?
So they know the end user of their chemicals.
I'm sure they know, because business is booming and they're also destroying America. And in my opinion, a communist country like China has a very big adversary in America.
There's also a Mexico problem, a huge Mexico problem, right? I did a meeting with the law enforcement agents, and they can show you how, drug dealer X on the street, gets it from trafficker Y who gets it from Cartel Z in this city in Mexico, right? And they can draw a line of how it got here. 50% comes from the southern border.
The greatest threat to the United States right now is Mexico. The second greatest threat to the United States right now is China when it comes to drug trafficking. And it hasn't changed. The mailing of fentanyl has been drastically reduced, but the production of the chemicals that are needed to produce fentanyl and or methamphetamine has not changed one bit. It's still being sent to countries that are making illicit product from legal commodity.
And that's why I get a little annoyed sometimes, like in 2017 to 2018, they showed like a slight decrease in overdose deaths. But what was very misleading in the press, that nobody was really reporting on how the synthetic opioid deaths went up. That's because it's the fentanyl, and it's coming from the cartels, and it's coming from China. So we have to recognize in this country that China and the Mexican cartels have formed a lethal partnership, and they're destroying our country very rapidly.
Stay tuned to get this razor-sharp non-stick knife set free from Granite Stone.
Now,
as your old set of
now I
pans
hope
lost their
that
slick, does everything get baked on, burned on, and stick?
now I hope that you can understand and relate to what I was talking about earlier in regards towards us being focused on this pertaining to Donald Trump, in which I'm not saying for a second that it's not important. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that it becomes a diversion to the degree that we spend a lot of our time, interest, and money on that, to where we should be focused upon, just like the show that you just seen on that other program, that news program pertaining to fentanyl. I realize that we don't live in a perfect world, but why make it more complex than what it already is if you can simplify things? And to me, the politicians, the judges, the attorneys, as well as the media, gets on a bandwagon like this right here, towards a pile-on, and the next thing you know, they turn it into a big ratings show. And that's not what our government is supposed to be about.
Radiation. It captures light first cast billions of years ago, which is then transformed into these stunning images. So now humankind can actually see galaxies being born. NASA astrophysicist Amber Strawn.
You know, we've recognized when we look at these beautiful images that we really are looking back at our origins.
We're looking at ourselves.
Absolutely, we're looking at ourselves.
Webb has inspired awe and taught us more about our infinitesimal place in the cosmos.
One galaxy has hundreds of billions of stars and probably hundreds of billions of planets.
Wait, hold on. Let me, I need to process what you're saying. One galaxy has hundreds of billions of stars. And we're talking about hundreds of billions of galaxies?
Yes.
Possibly a trillion galaxies.
Yes.
That is a number that is just so hard to compute.
It is. It's staggering.
Strawn was inspired as a young girl growing up in rural Arkansas, gazing up at the star-filled sky. Now, the images from the Webb Space Telescope have reinforced her deep belief we are all in this together.
This idea that the iron in our blood and the calcium in our bones was literally forged inside of a star that exploded billions of years ago as a supernova. We're connected viscerally to the universe, and I think also shows that we're connected to each other. All of these divisions that we have, in a big sense, we're connected to everyone else on the earth in a very fundamental way.
Strawn was part of a team of thousands that worked for decades to launch Webb. But the journey to get these breathtaking images was at times excruciating, and the telescope almost didn't get off the ground. NASA and its European and Canadian partners faced engineering setbacks, budget issues, and most of all, scientific hurdles that seemed impossible to surmount. And then there were the things a do-it-yourselfer might understand.
And in the acoustics test, a lot of fasteners or screws fell off. And so that was kind of not such a good day.
The screws were falling off.
So that was bad, but that's why we test.
Right.
We want screws to fall off while we're still on the ground, right?
Project leaders like Greg Robinson helped keep things steady. Robinson grew up in a sharecropper family, one of 11 children. He won a college football scholarship, studied math and engineering, and brought his sports experience to web.
It's just amazing the possibilities, what we can do when we work as one team. And I think we can do anything, and I mean anything.
Everyone and everything had to work in concert, including making sure the moving mirrors on the web opened perfectly in sync. While that was happening, commissioning manager Keith Parrish didn't sleep much.
Every day we were doing an unfolding process. So you'd win that day, then the next day you'd come back and you'd play the game again.
That's an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, and you
Wow,
did that for 14 days and you'd go back to the hotel and, but no, you're coming, come back.
Chief Systems Engineer Begonia Vila grew up in Spain, where she dreamed of a career in astrophysics, but doubted she had a chance.
If that little girl in Spain could see you now, what would she think?
I don't think she would believe it. It makes you feel you belong. You can make a home in a different place from where you grew up, and that we all have these common goals.
We have about 30 seconds till we should be in contact.
Using computers, specialists like Emily Bevins control the telescope that is 4 times farther away than the moon.
From 1,000,000 miles away.
Correct. There's a huge radio dish in Madrid that will be helping us facilitate being able to communicate with the telescope.
That evening, Webb sent digital data that was translated into images like these. A reminder that in a time when Americans may doubt we can pull together to do anything, the Webb team pulled off a triumph. A feat that has redefined the way we look at who we are and what we can do.
It's a reminder of what unity looks like. Exactly.
You know, I think one of the awesome things about this mission is that when we got started, it was impossible. And then to see these beautiful results, it's a beautiful example that when we put our hearts and our minds together towards something big and bold, that we can truly achieve the impossible.
Mackenzie Scott met Jeff Bezos in the early 90s, and together they started selling books out of their garage. That company would become Amazon. When the couple divorced in 2019, Scott received a 4% stake in Amazon worth more than $30 billion. That's when she decided to do something truly inspirational, give her money away. Last year, Scott gave over $122 million to the Big Brothers Big Sisters Foundation. Their CEO, Artis Stevens, took the call.
They told me the number, and I just started dancing. It is transformative, and it's going to mean so much for our communities.
You rarely hear from Scott, who stays out of the spotlight, but she continues to speak through her actions. To date, she's donated an astounding $14 billion to over 1,600 nonprofits and counting.
Coming up, my family was right there by my side, learning how to walk and run with me.
He's a father, he's a husband, he's doing great. That's the story that we want for everybody who serves our country.
I want to say thank you for listening. God bless you. I wanted to throw a little bit of something more than just turmoil on the back end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed some of the things that was being discussed and said today. And as we end our program by saying, God bless America, God bless our troops, God bless our endeavors towards where we go from here in the future, and heaven help us all. And shalom.